people who are being charged with crimes as an adult, even though they're not. I mean, that happens quite often. You have very bad crime happening in these places, and their argument would very easily be, you're going to pay now or pay later kind of thing. So when I think of this issue, I mean, wasn't there a program called Boys Town years ago? And where do you stand on that in comparison to a communist, calling somebody a communist? What would you call that program, Boys Town?
Well, that was a privately run charitable organization. It wasn't a government program. And you know how these government programs work. I mean, look at the way our public education system works right now. I mean, they're making it more and more difficult for homeschoolers to opt out. And they want your kid 24/7. This is a brainwashing operation. Matthew, I appreciate your call out of KSFO, but comparing Boys Town to what Artie Duncan's putting forward is like comparing apples and artichokes. Let's go to Gary at WJR, Michigan. Gary, you're on the air. Savage Nation, Brian Sussman filling in. Go ahead.
Yeah, Brian, I'd like to compare them to the Hitler Youth of the 40s and the Nazi regime. I mean, that's just taking over and sequestering the kids.
Bingo. And when I spoke to Michael on my program in San Francisco this morning, those were the first words out of his mouth. It smacks of Nazism. It smacks of the Soviet Union. You hit it on the head, Gary. Thanks for your call on the Savage Nation. Here's Gail calling out of San Francisco. Gail, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Hi, Brian. I heard you and Katie Green talking about the subject this morning. And
with Michael, yes.
Yeah. The first thing I thought of was it's orphanages. I mean, you're just going to rip these children out of what little home they might have, and you're also taking away any responsibility on the parents' part. It's just terrifying.
Yes, and that's what these liberals want to do. They think we're too stupid to raise our kids properly. They want to have the whole Megillah, K through 12. No, they want them 24/7. Thanks for your call. I appreciate it. We're going to come back in just a moment. Michael Savage, of course, taking the day off. Brian Sussman filling in. Think about this. A plane bound for Amman, Jordan, goes down to the Caspian Sea. The crash yields no survivors save the Russian mercenary who hijacked the flight and a cast containing an agent of unprecedented destructive potential missing from the wreckage. That's from Michael Savage's book, Countdown to Mecca. We're going to talk about that in just a few minutes. Stay tuned.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
Savage Nation. Michael Savage off, Brian Sussman in. Phone number 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Michael, of course, busy with his book tour, Countdown to Mecca. He was on my program in San Francisco earlier this morning. We're going to play that interview for you in just a bit here on the program. But Countdown to Mecca, what's interesting, all the more reason to purchase it. And I highly suggest you purchase it at a bookstore. At a bookstore. You know, here in San Francisco, without question, Michael has written more books than anybody living in this city. You've got a lot of very artistic, creative people in this city. You've got a few authors in this city. No one's written more books than Michael. And yet, at the same time, I don't believe there's one bookstore, and there are many bookstores in San Francisco, I don't believe there's one that's carrying this book right now. Just out. Go to your bookstore, order it. Put them on notice. Oh, sure, you can order it online. But there's nothing like putting these bookstores on notice. This is what they do with certain authors. They'll bury the book. I was talking about this with Michael. He said, yeah, you know, sometimes they'll take my books and they'll bury it in the women's hygiene section of the store. This is what they do. So again, Countdown to Mecca. We'll be talking more about that as the program unfolds. The train wreck, obviously, terrible in Philadelphia, 7 dead, 200 injured. It looks like a war zone for sure. What's interesting is this. The Philadelphia commuter train going from D.C. to New York. A Philadelphia commuter train was hit by a projectile about 20 minutes before the Amtrak train derailed. So a different train altogether was hit by a projectile about 20 minutes before the Amtrak train derailed a few miles up the track. Now, what was going on there? We're looking at special spokesperson for the Southeastern Pennsylvania Transportation Authority, SEPTA, says they don't know what the projectile was. Okay. I think it's rather curious. I think it's also interesting that the FBI has warned of train derailments. And, of course, when they warn us about when the federal government warns us about terrorism of any kind, it's usually, well, we're worried about those white Christian men who are cops. God forbid, in this particular case, they ruled out terrorism right off the bat. Nope, no terrorism here. We don't know what the cause was, but it wasn't terrorism. No. Don't even think about going Islamic on us, folks. Can't do that. No terrorism here. I just found that amazing. They didn't know what caused it, but they ruled out terrorism right off the bat. Well, we know a little bit more. The train was going around a curve at 100 miles an hour, which makes me wonder, when we get high-speed rail, here in California, they are pushing for this high-speed rail. The governor of this state, Jerry Brown, who's now in his 4th term. We have a law in California that says you're only allowed to have 2 terms. He gets 4. And by the way, his interpretation of the law was, well, that law was passed after I was governor the first time around. Can you believe that? These liberals don't care about the spirit of the law. They see the law as something that they can defy, get around, adeptly, swiftly. Constitutional attorneys like Barack Obama, he doesn't love and herald the Constitution. He sees it as a document that he can destroy legally, and he's doing it before our very eyes. A lot of people want to weigh in on this Arnie Duncan story, and it should not surprise me, because what this guy, the Department of Education Secretary, said yesterday is incredible. I'm going to replay the clip and get to calls in just a moment, so stay tuned for that. There was another statement yesterday made by another Democrat. This is Congressman Hank Johnson from Georgia. He's talking about the poor. I guess this is, let's be concerned about the poor week or something. And we are concerned about the poor. And we're concerned about the poor because the government tries to take care of them, and all they do is entrap them, imprison them. That's what Arnie Duncan wants to do with schools that are boarding schools, public boarding schools. Just take these people and entrap them. Do you realize we take these people and entrap them? You're going to be brainwashing them. They are going to come out the most weak, politically correct do-nothings. Oh, every agenda being pushed by the liberals, they'll be able to quote, it'll roll right off their tongue. It's a dream come true. Here's Congressman Hank Johnston, guys. We're going to play clip 4 here in just a second. He's saying the problem in Baltimore, is really not the cops. That's what he said. It's that we're just not taking care of the poor properly. And if we don't watch out, they're going to rise up and riot. Listen to this.
And I'll tell you, the free marketers have been winning of late. And it's to the detriment of this country. And if we're not careful, the have-nots in this country will rise up like the people in Baltimore. You can say that it's in response to police, it's a reaction to police excessive use of force, but actually what happened in Baltimore stems from deeper economic issues.
Deeper economic issues that I thought the Democrats have been addressing all these years. How many trillions have we spent on the war on poverty? We have, by percentage, just as many people in poverty today as we had then. All of these liberal machinations, all of these liberal utopian policies, they're not working, are they? No, they are not. Now, if you're just joining us on the Savage Nation, Brian Sussman filling in. Michael's off. We've got an interview that we're going to play with Michael. I conducted it on my morning show in San Francisco today. We're going to play that during the next hour, so you want to stay tuned for that. But here is the clip that everybody is going nuts over. And rightly so. This is Arnie Duncan, Secretary of Education.
The one idea I threw out that I wanted to sort of road test it with the kids too, I thought, is the idea of public boarding schools. And that's a little bit of a different idea or a controversial idea. But the question is, do we have some children where there's not a mom, there's not a dad, there's not a grandma, there's just nobody home? And there are certain kids we should have 24/7 to really create a safe environment and give them a chance. Give them a chance to be successful.
You know, that smattering of applause, it's like people, oh, wow, I like that idea. Should I clap? Maybe I shouldn't clap. It's pretty radical. Yeah, oh. Andrew's calling out of WABC. Andrew, thanks for joining us. Doug is in Colorado Springs, KVOR. Doug, you're on the air. Thank you for calling.
Hello, Brian. It's great to have you fill in. I read your book, Climate Gate, many years ago, and you're an excellent author yourself.
Thank you.
This reminds me of the great classic by Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, and it sends chills up your spine to think what these people want to do to this country. It is just appalling. And also makes me think a little bit of Ayn Rand's Brave New World, or Atlas Shrugged.
Yes.
And I will be out there to purchase Michael's book at the local book Barnes & Noble here in Colorado Springs.
Yes, make sure you do that, and let's put all these bookstores on alert that they need to make sure they have many copies available, because this is another bestseller, and I appreciate your call here on the Savage Nation. You know, there's something else in the news, and again, the train wreck is providing cover for the many train wrecks occurring before our very eyes via this administration. But does this bother you the way it bothers me? We have a report this morning, and I should say this afternoon. It came in this morning, but this is from InfoWars. Paul Joseph Watson writing, Special Forces out of Fort Bragg are training with SWAT officers in South Carolina. They're doing house-to-house raids. So these are all simulations, but they're doing house-to-house raids. So I love our Special Forces. I think you guys are awesome. I love our police. Thank you for being there when I've needed you in the past. But when I see them working together on domestic soil, I'm troubled by this. To me, this is an unnerving sign of the militarization of domestic law enforcement. Something that I believe the liberals have wanted. I believe they want to federalize our police force. You look at what's happening. They want new federal guidelines. It's the first step towards a federal police force. Of course, Michael and I have talked about this before. We already have something like that. It's all the gangs who were able to take over the streets of, for example, Baltimore and Ferguson and Oakland and these other places and just run wild. With people like mayors, in this particular case, Baltimore, saying, no, we need to give them room to destroy. So these late night and pre-dawn exercises involve the 3rd Special Forces Group out of Fort Bragg, North Carolina. They've been running since May 8th. They're going to conclude on Friday. To me, this is a violation of posse comitatus. Now, posse comitatus this is going back into the 1800s, President Rutherford Hayes. We would not be able to use the law the act entails creates a fact. We will not have the military use on domestic soil. That's just not going to happen. That's against the law. Now, I know some of you listeners are pretty bright, and you do a lot of reading, and you say, well, didn't that go bye-bye when Obama signed the National Defense Authorization Act, a.k.a. the NDAA? He did this isn't this interesting? If indeed he voided posse comitatus, wouldn't this be the perfect time to do it? Signed the law on New Year's Eve, December 31st. That's what he did, 2011. Who's paying attention to the news on New Year's Eve? So what it does is, it was passed in the House, passed in the Senate, he signs it. It makes it legal to incarcerate U.S. citizens without recourse to any form of judicial process. Did you hear what I just said? It makes it legal to incarcerate U.S. citizens without recourse to any form of judicial process. Now, they say it's for terrorism. But one of the provisions in the NDAA, and I'm just telling you what I'm reading right from the law, you could imprison, quote, any person who has committed a belligerent act. Now, that seems very broad to a lot of people. And as a result, a lot of people are very concerned about this. So, again, I love my special forces and I love my police, but when I see them training together on domestic soil in, going house to house for raids, and by the way, when they're doing these raids, every time they do these simulations,